Hello guys, Incubus42 with another Roblox related video. We're gonna go specific into the New York Times interview with David Baszucki, the CEO of Roblox. It got tense as suggested by the title. And we got Kevin Roos and Casey Newton as the interviewers and Rachel Cohen probably with the transcript of the entire podcast. So we're gonna, briefly look at the background with how Roblox has exploded with new milestones regarding user engagement and how that majority of it came from the COVID pandemic and onwards. And Roblox, however, got riddled with lawsuits left and right, especially from free states' attorney generals. And Roblox is, releasing new safety features, but who knows if it's enough. But we're gonna skip the introduction and go straight to the first question. With Casey Newton saying that you joined us to talk about the new age gating policy that Roblox is rolling out to kids. And I think we should start by looking at the scope of the problem. What has led you to this point? How do you think of the problem of predators on Roblox? And instead of we think this is an opportunity for us to get our crap together, I don't know if I would even call an opportunity necessary, but them getting themselves in a rut is already something. But David Baszucki starts off the answer with arguably one of the worst ways to phrase it ever, saying, we think of it not necessarily just as a problem, but an opportunity as well.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Like, excuse me, dude? You're calling a problem here an opportunity? Like, in a sentence. Having this problem, it's like, do they not know about that problem until, recently or what? Because there's, no way you could just say that in a sentence and just look good about it. No, some of the more ardent Roblox supporters in recent months was like, yeah, this is not looking too great of a statement, but, set PR back 5 years at least, dude. Like, what is this? And then he talks about at the beginning of the company, there were 4 people, including David Baszucki, where they just rotate responsibility as moderators. And then, Mr. New wants to know about the facial scan technology that's forcing everyone to scan their face to chat. And then David Baszucki just goes on about how long-term face scan isn't the only thing being checked for. And they apparently have behavioral signals, photo upload signals, and user-suggested age. And then how they're complementing that with age estimation signal, which, we'll have to see how good is going to execute down the line, but it's already not looking great. And, the other interview, Kevin Roos wanted to learn more about the technology himself. Just like, if you want for people to have confidence in your company, especially long term, it's highly recommended to be as transparent as possible so you don't, look shady and stuff. But then Dave Baszucki just ends up talking about the change in demographics where most of the user base 5 years ago weren't even teenagers to now almost 2/3 being teenagers or older. And all that other stuff. And then the EU and their age assurance technology gets brought up, where Dave Baszucki, says here that this isn't only a one-stop shop thing. And this is possibly checking as we go. So there is a possibility they are going to, in fact, check your face multiple times throughout the whole thing. which it's kind of weird, and it's call that dystopian, if you will. It's just nuts. And then age separation gets mentioned by the interviewer. Dave Baszucki brings up text filtering, which has been somewhat easy to bypass somehow. Like, there's a lot of Roblox memes and themes. If you go back and dig into them, everyone's just saying hashtag. Yeah, there's memes about people saying hashtag because how diabolically horrendous the filter has been. It's like it might have been too good at the time. Now they just find bypasses and just. And then the lawsuits and investigations into Roblox got brought up, and how predators are having a not hard of a time accessing the website, bypassing the filter, and all this other stuff. And Dave Baszucki, of course, does not want to comment on it, whether or not it's due to litigation or whatever. Who knows? But, he does bring up folks who are teenagers or older jumping to another platform where they have less or no filters at all, which I'm going to list two of them, Discord and Snapchat being the most prime examples. And, both probably should step up, and start talking about it at least. I don't expect them to solve Roblox's problems, but, should still try to make an effort with Roblox to stop this problem at least. Then when Casey Newton brings up, the same thing with kids leaving Roblox, it becomes clear in the lawsuits Roblox is where predators go to find the victims and try to. If he were to finish the conversation, I would bet that he was going to say, go to the less restrictive chat platform and just. But then David Baszucki interjects, interrupting, basically saying, well, I would say in the lawsuit or in the press, yes. Like they're going off platform. He agrees with that, out of all things, which, okay, that's a step in the right direction, that people are in fact going off of Roblox and just doing frick on knows what there. But he category rejects the actual description of what you're saying, which, that's just helpful. Like, you realize, yeah, it's going off of the platform, but you also don't realize or refuse to realize that it's starting on your own platform. And then when he says, oh, you don't think you have a problem with predators on the platform, right? And Baszucki, of course, says they're doing an incredible job relative to the number of people. Of course, he says that. He keeps saying they're doing a good job at everything, and yet the things that happen still happen, with lawsuits, people being assaulted, kidnapped, all this other crap, And then Cam Newton brings up, other platforms. And then, like, if someone were to ask, what's your Discord username? It should, it's a red flag or whatever. And Dave Baszucki, confirms that it's a simple red flag. Thank you. At least, at least he gets that out of all the things. But, it's like the idea is there, but the execution, I don't think it is, okay? And I mean the execution because people just bypass around it. And then, he brings up text filter, many prior generations, and how techniques are more sophisticated than that and all this other stuff. He somehow goes about cryptographically having an exchange to share snap handles, or at least try to. And then compares that to trying to share the name of an airport and it's getting blocked by the filters, which is, I don't know, man. Unless you're trying to reveal what airport you're in, no one's probably gonna use airport names as a way to, like, reveal location and stuff, which, you know. And then Mr. Bruce is like, yep, the other interviewer, by the way, if I haven't addressed him already, said, why have an open-ended text communication feature on a site with young people? And then Dave Baszucki brings up there's enormous benefits for people having, the ability to communicate, and benefits, such as not being lonely and finding their way around the world, so to speak. It's all fine and dandy, don't get me wrong. But within that, you also got to keep folks safe, you know. And Mr. Bruce then follows up with, is it fair to say that any platform with the same size is experiencing similar challenges? And Baszucki said, I wouldn't categorize any of that. And then talks about having 11 billion hours per month regarding user activity. And, comparing the stats of Roblox to Minecraft for some reason, which, okay. And then Cam Newton's like, you guys want a huge scale though, right? Like you said, push notifications, all those other benefits like daily lock-in rewards, which actually used to exist, but who knows if it does anymore. And talks about, $190 billion, probably the amount they have made or worth forever. And then, it's a dynamic I think find people frustrating. And then he talks about big tech and how they knows they have the problem and they try to solve it. And then when they keep growing further, then there's another problem. And then the dynamic is inevitable. But I think a lot of people want is some sense of have a plan. Yes, a plan for what's gonna happen when those users actually show up. It's like they need a plan to what to do when those new users show up, and and I'm glad that he brought that up here too. And then he says he's gonna push back on that for whatever reason. And then he talks about the time in Roblox like super long ago where there's like 200 people on Roblox, and then talk about should we keep it growing or have a safety team. And then they actually, and that's probably the one time they actually listened to the community. So, no. All right, all jokes and comments aside, though, that's when they actually started having a safety. But cool. And then Hindenburg gets brought up, which is where the unraveling kind of begins, because Hindenburg's research came out with Roblox was compromising safety to report growth. And Dave Baszucki's like, fun. Let's keep going down this. And so first off, Hindenburg's no longer in resistance. So you should report on that. Probably trying to take the upper hand on the interviewers. And then he continues saying, you're asking me about this, and I'm curious if you've done your own research. And, Mr. Roos said, I have done research about, and then gets cut off with, what's your take on it? Well, I'm asking you. So that's real interesting because I think we're diving into a situation where we're getting better, which the user have yet to see where they're getting better. Let's be honest. And compares, AI moderation to the car assembly line. Like, that's not even on the same league, dude. It's not. I'm sorry. It's just not. And then, this gets brought up in the question that Roots was going to try and ask fully, but then gets interrupted again with Dave Baszucki saying, yeah, I would actually then harder with the automatic moderation that has been causing more problems than it has been getting notable success. And Mr. Roos says, yeah. And then David Baszucki says, good, you're aligned with what we did. High five. Mr. Roos tries to say that I've been also covering social networks and tries to bring up how Facebook was trying to do the same thing Roblox has been doing, but David Baszucki would interrupt 2 more times saying, thank you for supporting our decision matrix, which is, that's just a funny statement. It's like, yeah, welcome to the Matrix, folks. Like, bro, let's not get into the freaking Matrix. And is this a stealth interview where you actually support it just stealthily? But no, dude, you asked to come on, talk about your age gating feature, and all this other stuff. And then Baszucki brings up the PR, how if there are people talk about age gating for, I'm up for it. But I wonder if the PR people tell all the staff everything they need to know, and which is why 90% of the PR statements absolutely suck. And then Mr. Bruce talks about, we're going to talk about Steel Brain Rot 2, and a certain character associated with that one. And then Mr. Bruce finally, after being interrupted 3 times, gets to Mark Zuckerberg wanting to use automatic/AI moderation to solve all of the content moderation issues with less people. And ironically, it did too much taking down, or not enough with the actual bad content. And then Dave Baszucki just then brings up about the algorithm and automation from like 2016. It's said, we've seen a lot of things where not being on top of what's going on in your company, and these algorithms lead to a lot of weird dystopianness as well. And he says, I love your questions, which I'm glad you love the questions. Totally, But with the previous sentence though, you should figure out if that's what's happening with your company as well. Because if it actually is and you somehow don't know it, something's got to be done about it. So it doesn't wind up like Facebook where it moderates too much or not enough bad content and all that other stuff. And then Mr. Roos says, you're confident the technology has gotten good enough to do it on a massive scale. And then he says, it's getting better again. Dave Baszucki has said that. And then Casey Newton said, look, Dave, I can tell you're getting a little frustrated here. And then Dave Baszucki says, I'm not actually frustrated. I'm so excited to talk. I thought we were going to talk about fun, funny things in the industry of all that.
You what?
It's like, David, maybe you'll be talking about fun, funny crap if your freaking moderation could just get their head out of their rear ends for even a second, a decade, a year, however much time it has out of its backside. Then yes, we will talk about fun, funny things. But no. You know what's not fun or funny? Hundreds, if not thousands of people being victimized initially by meeting predators on your website. But anyways. And then Casey Newton says, maybe try one last thing here. And then talks about, it's very difficult to do content moderation at scale. We've learned that from every single company. Yes, even if these people know about content-wide moderation, you should listen to them. Okay? And he brings up the Homeland Security and how a CEO of the company could feel like being the head of DHS for some reason. And Baszucki wants to push back on that. And he cussed. Surprise. But learning, he brings up innovation again for like the 8th time in this podcast, probably. I don't even keep track. And then, how do you measure success? And then he brings up, we have internal metrics. And we're watching the filter rates, this rate, all of that rate. What are the rates, David? What are they? Because if you can have internal metrics and be so transparent, you would think that they would be released to the public. You would think, but I don't know, man. And then they talk about children and screen time and if it's a bad rep or not. He responds with to be radical in screen time limits when his son Matt Baszucki was younger and all that stuff. And then David Baszucki brings up Polymarket. And, like, okay, that's just a random thing to bring up. Wait, where are you on Polymarket? I assume you are both big fans. We talked a lot about prediction markets on the show. And, Dave Baszucki brings up politics and all this other stuff. Betting and all that. Watching Polymarket and how the market fluctuates on who's going to win what race or whatever the heck, I guess. And then, Casey Nunez, you think this is becoming a really interesting signal to understand what's happening. And, he has a answer about if they're liquid and transparent, capturing away all the information at every signal, and if there's one election calendar way out in the corner, some weird county that knows it's going to go this way, if they could bet a certain amount, that's going to nudge the thing, make information more perfect. Okay. Like, and now we got Tung Sahur bringing up. Like, betting. It's like, would you ever have a prediction where you're gonna let kids bet on brain rots being stolen or not dressing to impress? And then brings up the complexity based on complexity and legality in different places of the world. And then Mr. Bruce said, to be clear, I think this is a horrible idea. And then you know what David Baszucki said? He thought this was a brilliant idea if it can be done in an educational way that's legal, with no Robux or free prizes. Nothing like starting gambling addictions early, apparently. Like, what kind of stupidity did I just witness from this arguably final answer to the statement? And then, Dave Baszucki would carry on about how the straw polls was not a prediction market and all that other stuff. Based on an elementary school straw poll about who would win the presidential election of 1988 and stuff. And he brings up if you brought a kid a dime of lunch money and some of them get an extra snack and some lost it, you could get a completely different result than the straw pool or poll, I don't know, you would get in any 5th grade classroom. And that's basically the end of the interview. Other than Mr. Roos asking if his kid could eventually play Roblox. And then Mr. Baszucki said how it's an amazing platform right now, and I'm happy to go deep with you and possibly non-disclose, show him the metrics and all that, which is just insane. Absolutely insane. And what can I say? This was a up and down interview, an absolute roller coaster. At moments, it was horrendous, terrible. And at other times, I can agree. I can somewhat agree. Like, yes, people asking for your Discord or Snapchat username on Roblox is a red flag. That can be agreeable across the board, universally even. But Dave Baszucki's answers to the topics that probably matter, like, whether there's a predator problem and all this other stuff, it's nuts, okay? Like, maybe you should consider fixing the problem to a point that is not that big of an issue, okay? So that's all I'm going to have for this interview. If you guys like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, stay notified when the next video, news, or other related stuff come out, and I'll see you guys later.